Here we go. Hello, everyone. We're live. We're so excited to be here.
Woo!
Ooh,
Everybody, welcome to the
no more
Remix live
woos.
stream. Ryan, do you want to say anything?
I was going to say no more woos into your microphones. That hurts people's ears.
No more woos.
We were late and then we screamed into their headphones.
Yeah, it's just, so Ryan and Kent are in Utah. I'm here in California. We've got people in our company who live in Michigan. I think we were just time zones. I think time zones just kind of made us off on this one. So apologies to everybody who's been waiting. No, for real though, we you know how live demos go. It was just a glitch. There was a glitch in the matrix. And so, but we figured it out, and we are beyond excited to share Remix with you today. It has been a long time coming. And what's funny is Remix today is something more than I think Ryan or I ever anticipated when we first started working on Remix.
Oh yeah.
Ryan, I think Ryan was thinking like, oh, it'll be like this cool like front end thing for people who are doing React on the front end. And I was thinking the whole time, like, oh, it'll be like this cool like back end framework that'll let you run like React apps on any provider that you want. And what we've come up with and what Remix has turned into and what Remix V1 stable is this kind of like this marriage of those two ideas, and then a whole bunch of other cool stuff. Because we got a lot of other great people that have been working with us over the last year in our community. The Remix community has just been amazing, full of such smart and talented and capable people. And it's just been an incredibly humbling experience to work on this project. So we're ecstatic to be here today. And we are announcing today the release of Remix V1. So Remix is now stable, so you can go and deploy that thing in your production apps. And if it's busted, we're going to fix it, but we don't think it's busted because a lot of people have been deploying it to production and it's been working great for them. I'm sure it's got some quirks, but it is stable and it is ready for the big time. This is obviously following close on the heels of our stable release of React Router V6, which we released earlier this month. Which is the best router by far that we have ever released. We published a blog post about that on our blog on remix.run. We published another post today about Remix V1, and the gist of that post was, and I'm so ecstatic that we've got Kent here as well, because I feel like we've really got a great team to be able to like teach this thing. When you ask people like, what is Remix? I find that you kind of get like a different answer depending on who you're talking to. Like if you ask me what is Remix, I'm like, oh, Remix is like this. It's like this server agnostic runtime for React apps, and you can run them on the edge. You can run them on Cloudflare workers. Maybe you can run them in the browser. Because we just use this service worker fetch API. You're going to be able to run them on Dino deploy very soon. If you ask Ryan, what is Remix? Ryan will probably tell you, it's about nested layouts, and it's about the power of nested layouts and, eliminating the waterfall, the data fetch waterfall, the asset, the CSS asset, fetch waterfall. It's about optimizing the user experience, restoring scroll position, enhancing accessibility, and, getting the best performance out of your app. If you ask Kent, what is Remix? Remix to Kent is probably going to be something like, it was just awesome to use when I was rebuilding my website, and it's built on web fundamentals. And so it's, the knowledge that you take when you're learning Remix is going to help you with other things that you're building. So I really feel like Remix it's kind of a different thing to whoever you ask. And which is also really cool because it's this community effort that it really is a full stack framework. So there are lots of different concerns that it addresses. But enough talk. We wanted to show you, take a chance to show you today a little bit about why we think Remix is cool. And like I said, it's a full stack framework, so we can't show you every reason why we think it's cool. But we have built a demo that is probably the first thing that you're going to want to build and that is your developer blog. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn the time over to my man Ryan, who is going to show you all how to rebuild your website with Remix.
Yeah, thanks. So if you go to remix.run/docs, you'll be met with this page and this quick start. I'm just gonna like run through this in a couple of minutes and show you what we do, but this whole thing will take you from soup to nuts. That's a phrase that Michael uses often. On just kind of like what Remix can do. So I've got a little starter template going on here. When you first boot up Remix, it'll give you one of these. So it just has a couple fun little things like what's more useful when it's broken. Websites? Nope, that's not the right answer. So anyway, you can poke around in this code when you first initialize it and check it out. But I'm gonna make a little blog post thing right here. We'll make a folder called posts. I'm going to make a new route inside of here, and I'm just going to call it index.tsx. So index routes are like index.html. If they're in a folder, then that's what you'll see in that folder. I'm going to export a function. I got to get this video stream out of my way. Default. So in a route, the default export is your component. So I'm going to call this my posts. And then I'll just return like, hey. And then go over to my root. I got a header here somewhere. And let's add a link to our posts in here. Boink. 404 not found. Oh no. That of course is a little bit unexpected for me. Am I running the right app? Of course, I'm going to have this very simple thing right from the start not working.
Hey, Ryan, you named the directory posts, but I think you want that under routes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, sorry. It's been a wild morning. Hey, oh, there it is. Thanks, Kent.
You got it.
All right, so now I got my index. So I want to list some posts. So when you're in a React app and you're thinking, all right, I need to go get some stuff. You're gonna need you need to fetch something from somewhere, right? You're gonna go to an API. So Michael was saying, what is Remix? And everyone gives you a different answer. If you're from a traditional like web framework background, like Rails or PHP stuff, you can think about your React or your Remix routes as both your view and your controller, the thing that goes and gets the data. If you've been doing web development the last 5 years and most of the stuff you're used to is all in the front end, you can think about a Remix route as both your component and your API route. So I don't need to go make some other API route to get data for this thing. I can just say export function loader, and all of a sudden, I just became a full stack developer. This is my Remix, or this is my React UI right there. This only runs on the server. So I'm just going to return something like slug, my first post, if I could spell it right, and then the title, my first post. And then I want to get the data for this thing. So I'm going to say posts equals use loader data, and I get that from Remix. Oh. And so now let's cruise over this thing, map our posts. So much typing. All right, here we go. TypeScript's going to be mad at me. So I'm just going to, in the tutorial, we help you out with that, but I'm just going to be super lazy here. Look at that, my first post. Boom. So this code actually does not make it into my JavaScript bundles. This code stays on the server where it belongs. And I didn't have to do any data loading, any data fetching, nothing. All I got to do is ask Remix, hey, give me the stuff from this loader. So Remix routes are both your UI and they are their own API route. And you don't have to write any of the plumbing to talk to those two things. Let's link off to one of these. Link to
Can I say something, Ryan?
Yeah, please.
I was going to say, I really think that this kind of co-location of your data with your UI is kind of what makes people say, like, this kind of feels like PHP to me. You know, because you go up there and if you wrote PHP back in the day, you would have like, you would literally like require your MySQL client right at the top of your file. And then you would go run a database query and go get all of your posts. And then you would loop in a for each down below and you would sort of print out the HTML for them. You know, obviously this isn't that, but we're not too far off of that programming model, right? In one place in the same file, you can basically see, okay, I'm going to go get my posts, and then down here, here's what they're going to look like in the UI. We're obviously doing a whole ton of stuff that you weren't doing in your PHP app, right? This code, this file actually runs in two separate places. The UI part runs on the server when we're server rendering it. Also runs in the browser when we go to run the hydrate step, but it kind of feels like that same paradigm.
Well, and yeah, and then when you click on post, notice it does a fetch down here to the database and got that post. So it's actually doing fetches for us, but it's also server rendered. If I refresh this thing, the document has that post in it right there. Yeah, so it's like the backend frameworks plus the front end frameworks. I mean, that's why we called it Remix. Remix.
Yeah, well, and to take that even further, like we've been chasing this dream of co-location for as long as I've been in this business, and we've been trying to do it on the front end mostly, and that's why we have these waterfalls, right? Because we want to co-locate the data, but we didn't stop to consider the bad user experience that leads to, because instead of a waterfall, you have more like a water step. and this helps us avoid that.
Okay, so obviously your website, your posts aren't going to just like be these hard-coded things in here. Like, what am I going to do? Like put my HTML in here too? I mean, I could even use JSX here and it'll turn into stuff. But what I would rather do is I got this little kind of post thing. If you're a little old school like me, you can think of this like a model. And this thing is talking to my file system. It's unimportant for this demo. The only point is I've got a couple of functions here. I can get a post, I can get all the posts, and I can even create a post. But we could pretend like I'm talking to a database here. So instead of returning this stuff, I'm going to return this from that model.
Yeah, so this right now, this function is reading from the file system, but this could also be your database client that's going and getting your post from MySQL or a fetch from a JSON API somewhere. Any kind of data
or hit your GraphQL API, or
any kind of data dependency that you have. You could have like secrets and stuff in here where you need to authenticate with a database. Any kind of data requirement that you have can go right here in your loader.
Yeah, and what's really cool is when you're fetching in the client with fetch in the browser, sometimes you don't have control over what that API sends to you. It might send like 1,000 attributes on every single object. When you have this nice little function here, instead of filtering down those objects in your component, you can filter them down on the server, and this decreases the amount of junk that comes over the network like significantly. Okay, so much to show. All right, so now my loader is actually pulling from this posts folder right here, which again, we're pretending would be a database. So I'm going to link to this, my first post. I got a 404. So that's because I don't have a route that matches this URL. So I'm going to make a dynamic route that matches that thing. So I'll come into my posts and I'll make a new file and I'm going to call it slug.tsx. And oh no, what is that? So I'm going to use TypeScript on this one. I'm going to say export let loader. Let's bring in our type.
I'm going to make a macro that translates improt to import.
I type it a lot. All right, so now I got my loader function here. And then you can see here, we're going to pass you some params that you can use to look it up. So Remix is going to parse this section out because of this $sign. That makes it dynamic. So it's going to match against anything in there. And so now I can say return get post, and I'm going to pass it params.slug. And TypeScript is going to be mad at me because this came from the URL. So TypeScript can't actually know like what is on params. It's like there might be a slug. I can't know because that's not code. That's part of the URL. You could type anything you want there, or it could be in a different folder or something like that. So in Remix, the easiest thing to do to make TypeScript happy is to get some runtime checks with invariant. And you're going to say params.slug. So I'm going to return that post. And remember how I told you that your routes are your own API or their own API? You can actually make an API with Remix. If you don't export a component, if you just export a loader, you can see that this is just like a plain old get. It's giving you our application JSON content type. Here's an API route. But now if I want to use it in my actual UI here, I add my post. Oops, got those backwards. Then I'll get my data here. I guess it's just my post. And then I don't know what we want to do. We'll just be like h1 post.title. And now we're back in the app. Kind of cool. So it's its own API. You can get rid of the component though, and now it is an actual API route. You return anything. You return a PDF file if you wanted to. That'd be kind of cool.
Or an image, or
an image, yeah, whatever you want. Oh, you know what I actually want to do here? So get post already processes this into Markdown. So I'm gonna make this look better, and we'll put it in there. Post.html. Oh shoot. Normally we get I thought I was going to get my error boundary in here, but I didn't. Oh, come on. Chrome, give me a break. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, where are you throwing? You were expecting to get in there?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Okay, so there we go. Got our dangerously set inner HTML. I'm sending no cache headers, and anyway, I was messing around with that earlier. Moving on. So this is pretty cool. Got your API, got your component. I can come back to my posts. I guess if I had another one, let's do it's another one in here, another post. We should get a list of them. Here is the other. I can't spell.
The otter.
Okay, my post, another post. So back and forth we go. That's how you load data. That's what, 5% of Remix? But I think that's what most people want out of it, right?
Yeah. How do I build my blog in Remix?
Like 2% of Remix, but
well,
yeah,
that's what the front end frameworks do. They say, here's how you get data into your component.
Yeah.
And they usually lean you toward SSG. Some of them have some server-side rendering too, but they all have some sort of hook or multiple hooks on how do I get data into my component.
Yeah.
Imagine if React only had props and not set state. Like, what kind of app could you build with just props? And that's kind of our first intent with Remix was we were going to stop here. We loaded data, cool. And then we started building apps with it. It was really just our first website, and we realized 80% of our code was mutating data, changing data, sending emails, updating records, subscribing to newsletters, adding tokens to our database.
Logging in.
Yeah, logging in, managing sessions. Like when you build a full website, there are so many things besides pull data from some source and spit it out into HTML. Mm-hmm. That's like the easy part. And so we started thinking, how do we do this? we're all kind of old hats in web development. I started doing web development in the 90s, pretty much when it started to hit the public world. So we started thinking about, Michael and I started thinking about like, okay, how do you express a mutation? How do you express updating data with the web? Well, let's make a new post route. Some of you are going to be like, well, I know how you do that. So let's say new post and return a form. I mean, I could use a lowercase form. They're going to be the same. Method post. And let's put in some stuff in here. Title. Let's put some BRs. Let's do it like this. Input type text, name equals title. What else do we need? We need a slug.
Yep.
Name is slug, and then we need our actual body of this thing. Say Markdown.
Text area.
This one I'm going to need like HTML4 equals body, or I'll call it Markdown. And then down here we'll have our BR in our text area. And let's add 20 rows. Give us some room there.
Spelling on text area.
Text area. That's in Texas. That's how their text areas are. It'll work. Like the browser will look at their location and it'll be like, okay, yeah, I can use a text area.
I know what you meant.
Oh, okay.
Except you should have written it in all caps if it was in Texas.
That's true. Everything's bigger. All right. So Remix has a form. I can use this one too, but I want to use this one. They're the same, except for Remix will make it a little bit faster. So this is the first half of a mutation always on the internet. You make a form of some sort. Sometimes it's just a button. You may be used to doing something like this on submit. And then like you immediately event prevent default. And then it's just this cliff that you get dropped off of in React and the recent frameworks in React. It's like, now what?
Well, we should probably have some state to track whether or not we're submitting the form, whether or not we have an in-flight request.
Error state.
Should probably have some state to track whether or not there was an error, right? And if it came back okay.
You probably better do a use effect in there too, so that you avoid race conditions and
yeah, cancellation. Like there's so many concerns here.
For the people in the Discord, I'm curious, raise your hand if you only have used a form with prevent default. If you've never used a form the actual way, like the actual default behavior of a form, I'm curious.
Tell us the result. How are we doing? How many people are raising their hands?
They're like 15 seconds behind us, so it's starting to come in.
All right, never mind. I'll keep going.
Yeah, just keep trucking.
All right. So this is the first half. We had a form. You know what? Let's actually see this thing in the browser before I like just take off. All right, there we go. Pretty. I need a little bigger in there, but anyway. So I got the form. So that's step one. You always need some sort of backend piece too, right? You need an action to post to fetch to send this to. You brought in GraphQL and you got your GraphQL backend. You're going to send a GraphQL mutation. You're going to track state on every single one of these forms, and you're going to do a fetch to it. You're going to throw some spinners up. But in the end, there is a server somewhere with a function that receives that request and processes it. Right? Does something with that. Just like our loader, you can create an action in Remix. And if a form with a post gets submitted, it's going to come here. So let's do this. I'm going to get my form data. I'm going to await my request.form data. So Remix uses all the request objects in the browser. Like these things, you can create your own request in here if you want to. Oops, that's not right. Anyway, you can see the request is in here if I could spell correctly. We just use those. So over on your server, you get browser APIs, which Michael was mentioning earlier. You use Remix, you learn a lot about the web. This is one of those pieces. You now know the fetch API better when you use Remix, but we're using it on the server. So now I'm going to say my title equals form data.get title. And then I'm going to get my slug. Don't mind my wife and dog walking past. We start a little bit late. Time to pick the kids up from school. They're not coming here though. That'll be too loud. What else did I have in here? Title. I got my slug.
She's used to you drawing attention to her on your video chats. Yeah. She doesn't
I told her she could like crawl behind the chair, and she's like, yeah, but then if they see me, that's like even worse.
Crawling.
All right. Oops, not create portal. Wait, create post. And then I'm going to send this stuff into my create post method. All right, TypeScript is freaking out at me. I'm not going to sweat it right now. Then I'm going to return a redirect to my posts. Let's bring in a redirect from Remix as well. All right, one. This is the next post. Hooray. Oh my gosh, I forgot a submit button. Can't submit a form without a submit button.
You sound so enthusiastic.
If I hit enter right now in this field, will it submit the form?
No.
Need a button.
What if there's only one input?
Yes.
It's so weird.
I love the web.
It actually makes a lot of sense. Michael and I used to do a little bit in our workshops for that. Okay. So here we go. One. Here it is. I'm a little bit nervous. We've had a rough morning. So like everybody just like, I don't know, do the I do believe in fairies thing before I click the button.
I do believe in fairies.
All right. Oh my goodness. There it is. Here it is.
Hey, you just wrote a file on the file system.
Yeah, do you see that pop in over here?
That's interesting.
So normally I'd go to the database, but I got my little post model here that says, hey, create post, and just go write the file there.
Yep.
So check out what Remix does when we submit a form. Actually, I should just pause for a second. I was ready to just like jump in.
I was going to say, we need to appreciate like just what happened here.
Right? I wrote a form, named my inputs, let the browser serialize that. I didn't have a bunch of state. I'm not like,
yeah, check out the rest of this component. Check out the rest of this component. There's nothing here. There's just JSX. You don't have a use effect. You don't have a fetch. You didn't bring in, your client, your data client for making mutations, your React query or whatever it was. Like you didn't bring in any of that. You literally are just using the built-in browser APIs.
Yeah. In fact, here, watch this. Let's just prove it. Lowercase form.
Yeah.
So here we go. Watch the network tab. If I could get this in here. Two. Again. Check it. Network. What is? Oh, that's my console. I create this post. Watch. Well, the spinner is going to just flicker really fast, but. So that was. So here we go. New. You can see here that the browser made a post to post new, and the browser, where are my request headers? Here they are. The browser itself, where my screen's not big enough. Why won't it show me? Normally it shows you the, did they move it? They move. Oh yeah, they moved it into a new tab. That's
that's weird. That's the first time I've seen that.
Brand new.
That's kind of nice, actually.
Yeah. Oh, totally. You don't have to scroll down. The browser is the one who serialized my form. I didn't have to keep it in a bunch of states. I just put it in the form. It's already in, like the state is in the browser.
Yeah.
And the like I'm emphasizing this a lot. Those who are watching this who've been doing web development for a long time are like, yeah, we know. But a lot of people, and we know all three of us have been educators on the web for years now. And this is new information for a bunch of people that the browser knows how to take a form, take all these inputs, serialize them, and send them as form data in request to a URL that's a post. And then the backend will receive that on the request form data.
Yeah. So again, to make the kind of comparison to the PHP days, this is kind of like your global post variable. Remember when you would get some data coming in and you would check the post global and you'd be like, okay, let's see, what did they submit? Okay, now we're going to go and insert it into the database. That's your action. So we showed you your loader. The way I think about the loader in action is I think about reads and writes. Loader is reading. I'm going to go and grab some data from the database. Action is like, I'm going to handle mutations, right? So Remix comes out of the box with first-class support for data mutations. It's not just like something we kind of swept under the rug. It's front and center.
Yeah. Yep. And another really cool thing about this, like it's cool that we can do this, right? That's fun. What actually, it does matter though. Being able to, like, your application working without JavaScript is important, not because people run around the internet without JavaScript enabled, which maybe some do, but that's not why we do this. It's not why we care. The reason we care is because sometimes people connect to your website with a slow internet connection or a bad internet connection, and the JavaScript doesn't load, or it takes a long time to load. And you don't want to make them wait forever to be able to start interacting with your app. So if I'm on a bad internet connection and I get the HTML, I can start using the app right away. I don't have to wait for the JavaScript to load and rehydrate and all of that nonsense. It'll work. And it works either way. You use the uppercase form, you get a little bit nicer user experience, it's a little bit faster, but this is what we call progressive enhancement. Like, bring back progressive enhancement. This is what it is. Remix lets us progressively enhance our applications better than anything else I've ever used.
People like to do form validation in the client, right?
Totally.
Indeed.
we didn't validate this form. Lots of people are watching this live stream like, yeah, there's not a lot in that component, but you didn't validate anything. I just threw this stuff in here to make TypeScript happy. But let's check out form validation in Remix. Well, first of all, HTML already is really capable. You have required, you have pattern where you can actually give it like a regular expression and it'll match against that. And we can let the browser do the client-side validation, but you still want to do some server-side validation because any joker can make a post to this route and try to mess you up. So this is one of my favorite parts of Remix is validating an action. So before we take an action on our file system here or our database, we want to make sure that the request we got is good. So I'm going to say if I don't have a title, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make some errors here. I'm going to make it an object, and I'm going to make TypeScript happy. I'm going to say this is a record string Boolean. And then I'm going to say if I don't have a title, errors.title equals true. If I don't have a slug, and of course you can bring in stuff like Zod and whatever other thing you love to validate forms and come up with schemas and like lots of stuff if you get super serious about form validation. Apps I build usually have a couple of fields, and this is probably enough. So if I have any errors, I'm going to say, all right, if object.keys errors.length, if I got any errors, I don't want to keep going with my code here and actually go create that post. I want to tell the user about this. I want to say, hey, I need some stuff from you. So I'm going to return these errors. So we had a loader that returned some data before. This is an action that's returning data. So before it was use loader data.
Hey, Ryan, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Could you bump up your font size? We have.
Oh, I bumped it down to show everything. And then, yeah, thanks. So I'm going to use action data this time. You know what? And I'm going to switch it for the people who like dark mode now.
Oh man, the people in the Discord chat are going to go crazy.
Oh, they're going to love it. Let me scoot this back over so we can see the whole UI. Okay, so now I got this thing, use action data. It's just like use loader data, except for it gives you whatever came out of the action. Now, if I ended up at this route on like a get request, like the initial thing, or a link to new, I'm not going to have any action data. So you can see the type on this is an any. We don't know what you're going to return. And it might not actually be there too, because it's only there after a post. So you have to do a little bit of defensive programming with the action data. But this ends up being really cool. Check this out. So I'm going to say errors.title and do I need a span here? I'm going to do an EM. That'll be nice. You need a title. Let's do it with the slug. You need a slug. A slug in the shoulder for starting this thing so late. And then we'll just stick this one next to the label. Errors.markdown. You need some markdown. Cannot read properties of undefined reading title. Look at that error message. Hey, developer, you should replace this with what you want your users to see. We're talking to you there. All the way up at the top of this thing in our route. Sorry for those of you who call a route. We have these things called boundaries. You may have heard of error boundaries in React. We took this like to the next level. Error boundaries run on the server. They run for your data loaders. They run for your data actions. And if an error is thrown anywhere that Remix is involved, you're going to end up in this error boundary. So this is where we're at because reading title on undefined. So if I come back over to my new post, I didn't do anything defensive, which is what I just told everybody. Got to be defensive. Okay. Now I'm good. Those error boundaries are amazing. All right, so I'm going to hit post. Boink. Look at that. They all showed up. All right. Title. Submit this. It's gone. So that is making a round trip to the server. All of this validation happened on the server and then came through a fetch to my component. I can turn off JavaScript and this will work the exact same too, because it's just built on web fundamentals. So if I submit this, I get the same experience, but I still have them there. But if I have JavaScript, we can make this experience even better. Let's slow down. Let's slow down this request just to kind of like feel it. So we're going to await a new promise. Resolve that. We're going to wait 1 second. That's what my kids always tell me. I'm like, you got to get off of Fortnite. 1 second. 1 second. All right, so this is going to feel terrible. I'm going to submit this. Click. And I get 0 UI feedback. If I had used just a plain old form, or we have this thing called force reload or force document, reload document. We bike shed that a lot, and I keep forgetting the exact name that we ended up with. So now this is going to submit this with the browser instead of JavaScript. When I hit create post, the browser starts spinning that thing up there. You see that? Here, let me click it again. 3, 2, 1, click. The browser gives the user feedback that says, hey, I'm thinking here, I'm doing something. When we start using JavaScript, we usually, well, I won't say usually, we often make the experience worse. Like the browser already had some default stuff here. Now watch. Nothing. I have no clue anything is happening. So you'll hear us talk a lot about progressive enhancement. This is what we're talking about. This is faster. We don't have to do a full document. We don't have to pull CSS from the cache on the disk or refetch it from the server. We don't have to reparse JavaScript. We don't have to do any of that stuff if we do a fetch for this post. But then we just busted the user experience by not giving them any feedback. So what we need to do is we need to enhance, like we already enhanced it to make it faster, but we can't break the user experience aside from just performance. Sometimes people put these blinders on of like, everything is about how fast it is. But you also got to think, well, when it's not fast, I can't control the user's network. There's nothing I can do to make their network fast, except for like try to get fiber all over the world, I guess. But I can't do that. I'm just a developer. So I made it fast by using capital F form. And now, in case it's not fast, I'm going to get this thing called the transition from Remix. And this transition tells you everything that's going on with a route transition. And then when I'm submitting, so you can see this transition has a handful of things on it: a location, a state, a submission, and a type. If I'm submitting a form, this submission thing is going to be there. So that's a great way to know if you've got a submission going on. You can also check if the state is submitting as well, but I'm just going to use the submission one. So I can come down here and I can just add a really quick pending UI on this. I can say transition.submission. You got a submission in there? If so, we'll say creating. Otherwise, we'll say create post like we did before. So now when I hit this button, see it switches over to creating. So the user gets this feedback that something is going on. Look how easy that is. You just ask Remix for what's going on, and it'll tell you. And now we can enhance this experience in a lot of other ways, right? Like we could have this slug, like as you type, we could have this slug bring in some sort of library that slugifies the title for them automatically. You're not going to get that without JavaScript. So you hear us talk a lot about like, it even works without JavaScript, but that's not our goal. We're not like anti-browser JavaScript. We want to make great user experiences, and you need JavaScript for that, but we don't want to break the base user experience. There's two benefits to that. Like Kent was talking about, when the network fails, or maybe you just have an app where you don't want to ship that stuff, you can. But the other benefit to this is, oh shoot, I just lost my train of thought.
Well, yeah, it's like you were saying, like you can run your site without JavaScript, but that's not the goal, right? It's the site will always work, which is nice. In fact, lots of times we've actually been kind of confused. We've kind of played ourselves a little bit because we think that like it was like, oh, look, the site still works. And then we're like, oh, wait, but JavaScript is broken and we didn't notice the error in the console. So maybe we got some work to do there. But the basic idea is like we don't want you to get the idea that we're trying to make all these sites run without JavaScript, but they can. The truth is sometimes you want JavaScript to make a nicer UX.
Yeah, and the second thing that number one is make a better UX. The second thing is actually a development workflow thing. You saw how I built this form first without anything going on, nothing fancy, just the form and the action, just the critical pieces. I could ship that. I could put like a reload document on here because it's Friday and like I need to go home and the sprint is over and I gotta like ship this. I could have left it there. None of this fancy use transition stuff. I don't get this part. I can ship that. And then when we have the time, I can pepper in the better UX. You can't do that if like you just use HTML forms and HTTP and HTML. And then you're like, okay, now we need to make it fancy. That's a big change.
It's a completely different paradigm. Yeah, it's like,
completely different programming model to like do all the fetching and state in the client, or to just do it the way HTML does it. So when we talk about progressively enhancing your app, that doesn't just mean give the user a base experience and then make it better and better and better with JavaScript. It also means do the base experience and ship it. You get to progressively build your app. So if you don't have the appetite to make this form awesome, like just keep it simple, let the browser handle the spinning favicon, and away you go. If you got the time to make it great, get a designer in here, figure out some awesome pending states, some awesome optimistic UI, and just go crazy with it. That's my demo. I'm done.
Yay.
Oh man, I was hoping we were going to go for 10 more minutes and show people how to deploy it and everything else. But you're going to have to go and read the docs for that, because we've got plenty of docs about deploying all over the place. And,
tomorrow I'm doing a live stream to go through the whole my tutorial. So Ryan wrote what he just did basically is a tutorial that you can go on the website right now to go follow that. And I wrote a whole app, really deep dive tutorial. It should take you, I don't know, maybe more time than it should. Maybe I should have made it.
Well, it's
shorter.
good. I mean, this week is people, at least here in the United States, should have a lot of time off work. So it'll be a nice, good deep dive. You can sit down for a couple hours, and Kent will walk you all the way through. He walks you all the way through user authentication, through session management, setting up your database connection, using Prisma, what that looks like, even like hashing passwords and stuff like that, as well as a lot of the finer details of the client side user experience. So that's a great tutorial. So we've got, the basic idea with the launch was, we'll have these like two paths that you can take. You can either kind of go on this quick start, which is like this developer blog thing, or you can do this more deep dive and build this jokes app complete with authentication and everything kind of built into it. And yeah, just sort of pick your flavor. This is not by any means the end of our efforts. It really just feels like the very, very beginning. We have got so much more stuff that we want to build and show you how to build with Remix. And we're super excited about that. Kent, you are doing something tomorrow, aren't you?
Yeah. So tomorrow, somebody just asked if that tutorial thing is going to be recorded. Yeah, it'll be live streamed on the Remix channel. If you go to the Remix channel right now, there's a card for that live stream. In fact, you know what? I'll just go there and post a link to that in the Discord. But it'll probably be like 2 hours or something. You can follow along. But you'd probably be better off just kind of watching and taking notes, because I can go a little fast. People have a hard time following along. That's why I don't normally do that sort of thing. I normally like, here's a workshop, you do the exercise, and then I'll do it later. But so it'll be a good time, and you'll be able to ask questions and stuff. I'm planning on live streaming about Remix a lot. So there's a lot to come, and we're only getting started. We are over an hour, or almost an hour now, and we wanted to give people a chance to do Q&A. Do you want to do a little Q&A before we wrap up?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do some Q&A.
Sweet.
You said we're on like a 15-second delay with the people in the chat, right?
Yeah. So folks, why don't you go ahead and just @mention me if you have a question, because it gets like mixed up in all of the other messages, and so I can get the highlights. So if you have a question, just @mention me. I did notice one person asked about the loaders and whether they support WebSockets. One of you guys want to talk about WebSockets?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. We actually don't support WebSockets yet. We haven't figured out a good API for that yet.
We really haven't had time to think about it either.
Yeah, we haven't had a whole lot of time to think about what real-time APIs look like yet, but I would love to hear people's ideas about that, proposals.
And we didn't get into this, but a little bit. You can deploy Remix anywhere. So like Remix isn't the actual server. Like it's a runtime for Express and Node and Architect and Vercel and Netlify and Cloudflare workers. Like it's really just underneath. It's a function that you send a request to, and then it gives you a response, and then we convert it to the real thing. So you can use Express, or you can use whatever your current server is. I don't know if Vercel has sockets or Netlify does. I know Architect does, and AWS. So Remix can be a piece of your bigger stack. So you can still make your WebSocket however you did before, and then just send all of your UI routes to Remix. So we don't support it directly, but we don't keep you from doing it the way you've always done it.
Right. So so for example, if you were building an Express app, you could just throw your WebSocket middleware in there, and then in your use effect or whatever client side, you can say, okay, here's a new WebSocket, and boom, you've connected it up. So Remix doesn't really have very much to do with that. But
we would love to, right? Like we took the HTML forms and we took HTTP post, and we made it so simple to like, all right, export an action, bring in this hook, and away you go. So we want to figure out, here's a WebSocket route and here's a hook to get everything from it. We actually have I was talking to Sergio last week, and he had some amazing ideas on this. So yeah, look out for that. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it turns out building on the foundation or the fundamentals of the web platform opens up some really awesome abstraction opportunities. like you both said, Remix is nothing like it was when you first started demoing it to me like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
It is very different. Well, but it was always based on the web platform. Like it always had that as a goal. And I think that's what opened up so much here.
Oh, it directs us every time. We're like, how should we handle this? We're like, well, what does the web just do in the first place?
Yeah,
all right,
let me build a basic HTML page and kind of observe what the browser does. And then I'll just do that a little bit nicer.
So we're getting like a silly number of questions. So I'm going to have to be picky and choosy. But the very second question that we've got on here is probably on a lot of people's minds. Do either one of you want to talk about Next versus Remix right now, or do you want to kick that can down?
I can do that. I can do that really quickly. Next has 4 ways to get data into your component, right? There's get server-side props, there's get static props, there's get initial props, and then throughout their docs, they recommend use SWR, client fetching, when you have a user, right after authentication. Like that's kind of where they direct you. And so it's very much about like, how can we get the fastest time to first byte ever? It feels like when I read the Next docs, that's their goal. And that is an awesome goal. And hands down, SSG is the fastest way to get a time to first byte on a static document. Absolutely.
And but how many bytes are you sending?
Yeah, how many send?
What is in those bytes?
So, and we don't, like, Michael and I are friends with Guillermo. Guillermo is like one of the critical people who helped me learn JavaScript when I was in my 20s and he was a teenager, and like we were both doing mutools. So like, if I guess I want to address this like as soon as I possibly can with our community. Mutools and jQuery, there was like these annoying battles and like people would be all mad at each other and like ripping on the other platforms. And what was interesting is, or like Angular and React and Ember.
Yeah.
The people building the technology are actually all friends. It's people talking about it on Twitter that like make it seem like there's this big rivalry and stuff. So like we are friends with the people at Vercel. So I don't ever want anyone acting like there's this fight or something. But their goal, it seems to me, and they can tell us if we're wrong, it seems like time to first byte is the biggest deal and SSG is the main thing. You can see from that demo that we just did, we're trying to think about the entire user experience. After you're authenticated, we still don't want to do client-side fetching in components. We want to like take care of the network tab. We want to have a way for forms to update. We want to lean on the platform as much as possible, and think about the entire user experience rather than just how do we get a page as fast as possible. And to me, that's kind of comparing us to Next is a little bit less interesting than comparing Remix to Rails. Remix to me is a lot more similar to Rails than it is to Next. How'd I do? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's awesome. While you're at it, a next really common question I'm seeing in here is about CSS and JS. So do you want to talk about that?
Michael's got that one.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that one. Yeah, sure. So CSS and JS, I think when you go back to kind of the roots of the talk, Christopher Shadow gave a talk at Next.js, I believe it was, where he first kind of started talking about this idea of CSS and JS. And if you haven't, you totally should go back and review that talk, because
I even have a GitHub repo from before that talk where I was experimenting with that.
Yeah. Lots of people have been like kind of hinting at it for a long time, but I feel like that talk kind of pointed out like a lot of the kind of bullet points of like, here's the problems with CSS at scale at Facebook. And we're thinking that we could address some of those problems if we put our CSS in our JavaScript. And he makes a nice list of like, here's the problems with it. One of those problems is, the global namespace, right? Global namespace where selectors clash. Other problems are things like, for example, finding dead CSS. Like, how do you know when styles aren't being used anymore? Well, if you're just importing them as variables in JavaScript, then you can like prune the dead code automatically out of, so there were some interesting things about taking CSS and putting it into JavaScript. We actually have I feel like Remix actually, we haven't really even talked about it. We haven't even talked about HTML preloading of resources or the nested routing or layouts, or there's so much stuff that we haven't talked about.
Yeah, we just showed you maybe 20% of Remix.
Yeah, we showed you like 10% of Remix, but one of the cool things that Remix does with your style sheets is you can actually associate style sheets with your routes, and Remix will automatically load and unload them to and from the page as you navigate around, right? So if you have nested routes, you'll have a style sheet on the page, and then if one route unmounts and another one mounts, that style sheet goes away and the other route's style sheet shows up. And so you actually get, you got a little page about
yeah, we got a demo that shows up.
Yeah. So, you know, in that way, Remix actually kind of alters some of like the basic expectations that you might have about CSS. You know, one of them might be, well, when we deploy CSS, we really just bundle it all up and we put it in a big file and we serve it all at the same time so that all of the CSS is on all of the pages on our site. That's how a lot of people are doing it right now. They're not code splitting CSS. But Remix will actually code split your CSS for you and unload it when it's not being used. So that, you know, it kind of changes one of the core assumptions that you might actually have about CSS, which I think kind of goes back to, you know, it should make us kind of question, like, if the playing field has changed, do we actually need, you know, all of these things that we thought we needed before? I'm not saying, by the way, that you don't need your CSS and JS. I think there have been a lot of cool things that have happened there. A lot of,
especially for design systems and component libraries, like that's critical. We're thinking more like app CSS here.
Yeah, absolutely, Lots of cool stuff has gone on there, but the playing field has changed a little bit with Remix. So what we're doing is we're taking what we know about Remix, what the capabilities that we've got. We're looking at CSS and JS libraries, and we're still figuring out how to best support them. Having said that, we do have already some really great support for styling in Remix. Our contract, basically, our abstraction is you give us a CSS file. And so if you're building a CSS framework, if you're working with a CSS framework, whether it's, you know, Tailwind or styled components or whatever you're doing, and there are a million different flavors, as long as you're working with somebody who can give us a CSS file, we can work with that. And that opens up, you know, there are a lot of different possibilities. So honestly, most of the time, what we're doing is we're just doing post CSS, or even just plain style sheets. We'll use post CSS with auto prefixer and, you know, a minimizer, or we'll throw Tailwind in there or something like that. And we're getting quite far with all of the CSS that we're doing, and we're really enjoying the setup that we've got. But yeah, there is still a little bit of like integration work that we have to do to figure out how to best support CSS and JS. But just know that your CSS framework for now to work really, really well with Remix needs to give us a CSS file. And if you can do that, we're good.
Yeah, and you can do the runtime stuff too, like styled components, as long as it doesn't require like compiler integration. But to Michael's point, like the playing field's a little bit different, and Remix cares a lot about this network tab. Like, I don't know how much time we have spent in this network tab making sure. I mean, just look at this thing. When I reload this with a bare cache, look at how every single resource is started in parallel, except fonts, but that's the browser. So we have taken great care to make the time to first byte in a Remix app and the loading of resources as optimized as possible. And the best way to do that is to actually have a real CSS file. And like you saying, the playing field has changed. Like, we got a ton of styles on this website, so much stuff going on here, and our CSS file is 6 kilobytes. So like there's anyway.
So yeah, we're still thinking about it. We're still researching it. We haven't ruled anything out. For now, we would prefer solutions that don't require us to modify our compiler, just because that's not a tenable strategy. You know, us modifying our compiler to accommodate a new CSS framework. It's very early with our compiler. We're basing it on ES Build. We're very happy with it, but it might not always be ES Build. So we hesitate to integrate at that level. Instead, we prefer to integrate at the, CSS file URL level, which I think is a reasonable expectation for a CSS framework that you can generate CSS files for us.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay. So another common question here is the monetization strategy for Remix now that we don't make money from people paying for the software.
Oh, we're all retired.
I'm just independently.
We do this for free.
I don't need money. I'm glad you asked that. So here's the thing, Ryan and I have been building stuff for the web for a long time. Kent has as well, obviously. The team that we have has as well. There are two things I want to talk about. One is Remix going open source. Open source software is an extremely powerful thing, right? Now that Remix really is open source with an MIT license, I think we are going to see waves of contributions, like significant contributions from really capable developers and companies who are going to make Remix even better than we've made it already. Like I think we've done a pretty darn good job, but I cannot wait to see the contributions that come in. Just this last weekend, Jason Miller got a early access to Remix, and he was making contributions to help it support Preact. The Cloudflare
also
team
great for the network tab.
Yeah, which is also great for the network tab, right? Shave off a couple of bytes by loading Preact instead of React. So those of you who don't know Jason Miller, he's the core team of Preact.
Everywhere he goes, things get smaller.
Yeah, we've been talking to lots of different people at lots of different companies, Cloudflare, at Google, people who are interested in making Remix work really, really well on their platforms at Dino. And so I think making Remix open source, I think just makes a ton of sense from that perspective. We're going to get a ton of contributions, and so Remix for you, the user, the person who is using Remix, is going to be 100 times better than it was if you would just have a couple of brains working on it and paid to work on the code. So that's number one. Number two is obviously how are we going to monetize this? Well, we've built stuff that people really like to use, and I'm not trying to brag when I say that, but like React Router and Reach Router are downloaded 34 million times a month. Unpackaged gets billions of downloads a month. Reach UI gets downloaded a lot. Like, we have a lot of expertise in making stuff that people like
across the whole stack, from Reach
across
UI
across the whole stack. Yeah.
To a CDN for everything on NPM. Yeah, that is web development.
Absolutely. And so the business model for Remix is actually really, really straightforward. It's just going to be make more stuff that you like to use, and we'll host it for you, right? So there's a lot of things that need to go into your web app, right? There's a lot more than just the application layer. You need authentication. You need, somewhere to host your app. You need to somewhere to host all of the images of your app. You need ways to run analytics on your app and figure out what's going on, and especially like
I18N.
Yeah, to do internationalization, translation on your app. Like accessibility audits, things like that. There are so many different services that we can provide, and having the expertise to know what developers need and what developers want, and then applying it to the services space. That's our plan, basically, is to give you Remix for free. Remix is going to be improved just that much more by so many more people being able to contribute to it. And then we're going to make goods and services that we know that you're going to love to use, but you probably don't want to host yourself, and we'll host it for you. And so there'll be a paid model around that.
And with the foundation of Remix, we can make them really good.
Right. That's the other
really,
thing, right? It's a full stack framework,
yeah.
Right? So we're not just giving you a piece of the pie, right? If we're going to build an authentication solution, for example, we can give you the components, the fully accessible Reach UI, components with layout and error handling and the validation and everything that we've been talking about. We can also go back and we can give you the the callback endpoints, right? For doing things like the OAuth dance and things like that, right? Like, because we also handle the back end, right? So we can provide solutions across the whole length of the stack. If we were going to do image hosting, for example, we can give you an image component, a React component that you can pop right into your app, and then, the service to host them as well. So that's one of the advantages of Remix being a full stack framework, is we can really get in there at any point in the stack and do whatever needs to be done.
All right, sweet. We have a silly number of questions. And so we definitely won't get to them all.
Yeah.
But Jacob recommended we answer this one about multiple forms that
one's easy. I mean, I don't mean to glaze over it, because it's an important question, but it's actually really easy. So there are a couple of things you could do. If you have multiple forms on the page, you can either include some sort of input, some sort of hidden input, and then just switch on that in your action, right? So you can say, okay, if they submitted this form, then I'm going to take this code path. If they submitted this other form, I'm going to take this other code path. Or you can also submit forms to different routes, right? So you can say, oh, okay, this is a login form, but it appears on this other page for some reason. And I don't know, for some reason I didn't put the right action in it, or, I can just pass the action in as a prop, and now this form submits to this other route over here. The routes, after all, are just represented by URLs. So yeah, there are a couple of different ways around it. Multiple forms.
I think they're talking about multiple forms, like all at the same time too.
Right, concurrently submitting forms. Yeah. So
So
talk about that. Use fetcher.
And I don't know. Who knows? They might be asking about both. So we'll just answer both questions. We have a hook here called use fetcher. It's a great name. And this thing, when you do use fetcher, it's got a form on it, it's got to submit, and it's got to load. So if you've got like 10 check boxes on your page and you want the user to be able to like click all 10 of them really fast, you can just create 10 forms for each one of those check boxes. And what's amazing about that, I built this feature for the most part, got tons of help from everybody, but it was mostly my job, and literally spent 3 months in this problem with how to handle cancellation, how to handle data revalidation. So every time one of these things is pending and lands, it has to check, or it goes and revalidates all the data on the page automatically for you, so that if anything else on the page might be rendering that checkbox's information, because it could be like over on the left sidebar or something, right? Or how many items are in the cart up in the top. Remix will refetch all that stuff after the mutation's done. And it knows, when do I cancel this one? Can I cancel that one? Or should I wait for this one to go through? So your UI is always up to date this whole time with whatever the server's got. And if you have resubmissions to the same thing, it'll cancel those other requests so that they don't. I mean, go to almost any website, click the button 1,000 times as fast as you can. You're going to end up in a different state than the server, probably. But Remix manages all that complexity for you.
Yeah. So depending on what the question was, if you wanted to know, like, oh, how can I put multiple forms on the page that are like doing a full page reload? That's kind of what I was speaking to.
Yeah.
If you have multiple forms that you want to submit via, fetch, that's what use fetcher is for. That's what Ryan was speaking to. But we've got you covered either way.
In general, Remix has you covered pretty well, I would say.
We're building real stuff with it,
Yeah. I think that we don't want this to go super long, so we're going to wrap it up there. There are like so many more questions. And so anybody in the community can feel free to answer some of these questions, and we can go through and answer some of these, and maybe just sit with it for a little while and let ideas percolate, go through the tutorial. Lots of the questions I'm seeing in here are answered in either Ryan's or my tutorial. So if you're really interested in it, go through that. That'll help a lot. In fact, like seriously, we've all been teachers, and like when we say things in front of the class and say, hey, did you know about this? We just say it offhand, and people think it's this big revelation. We're like, that's literally in the docs. You could have read that. And a lot of money. So go read the docs and
on that note too, I think one of the like hidden features of Remix, and I've heard a lot of people say this to us, is that Remix like tricks you into learning web development better. In fact, as part of our tagline, we say Remix build better websites. And then every now and then we add a little thing to the side of it that says sometimes with Remix. So when you use Remix, you're going to accidentally get better at web development, both because of our APIs and because we are taking the docs. They aren't done. We are taking the docs as seriously as the code itself. And we want you to use Remix, but we also want you to just be way better at web development. And so we're building the project and the docs to do that.
Yeah, precisely. So, hey, this was super fun. Did you want to wrap us up, Michael or Ryan?
Yeah. I just want to say, like, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, sorry, so sorry that we started late. It really was something that was not 100% in our control, but we're so thankful that you stuck with us and that you if you're still watching the stream at this point, thank you. And thank you, to our supporters who came along quite early, Kent of which, was one, and then just so many others who came along and supported us. I promise you, we're just barely getting started. So, we hope you have a ton of fun with Remix. We hope you can build some awesome stuff with it. We'll see you on GitHub and we'll see you in Discord.
All right, sweet. One person asked a question really quick toward the end here that I want to address. And they just said, is there anything that the community can do to help? And my answer is get really good at Remix and then teach other people how to use it. That's the biggest thing. So go learn Remix and teach people what you learn. We really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right. Hey, thanks everybody. We'll see you all later.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.